Welcome to our C-suite interview, where we will be exploring the topic of cybersecurity and more specifically, what cyber support members should seek in order to best prepare for and defend against an attack. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew Marks, who has held CIO positions at firms such as Tullow Oil and Grenadier Holdings, as well as a managing director position at Accenture, focusing on their technology strategy. Andrew, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you for asking.
To kick things off, I wanted to ask a couple of questions so our viewers can learn a little bit more about your background. Now, as you'll be able to tell your own story far better than I can, could you give us a 1-minute overview of your career to date?
I'll have to talk very quickly. No, joking aside. Right, cutting a long story short, and you've alluded to a couple. In the last 18 years, 15 of those have been in CIO or IT leadership positions where I essentially was top of the tree. And relevant today, I had accountability for the security and resilience of the organization that I was enabling. The last 5 years at Grenadier Holdings Limited, a portfolio business of around 30 companies. My role there focused on connecting the technology leaders in each organization, and specifically in the area of cyber, it was helping each one understand what was important for each respective business and learning from each other. You mentioned some time in Accenture, 2 years as a managing director in tech strategy. One of the areas of my focus was in data analytics and working with a data platform which included the security analytics capability. So exposure to security data and how it's used by the software vendors. And prior to that at Tullow, group CIO role, an oil and gas company. After financial services, oil and gas is well recognized as being a high target for the cyber criminals. There are plenty. Saudi Aramco and Maersk are two really good examples of organizations impacted. So I've very much been on the forefront of technology leadership and the importance of cyber response and readiness, and that word resilience, which I will come back to as we speak later.
Perfect, Andrew. Thank you so much for that. And did you always want to go into IT when you first started your career? Because it's obviously been very well storied in the function, or did you have any other aspirations?
Well, I'm actually, it's a great question. I actually trained as a geologist.
Oh, wow.
And my initial career was within as a geologist in oil and gas, looking for oil, looking for gas. It's an industry for which technology is, I say, an enabler, transformational, and I enjoyed using the technology. And I had a sort of a career decision to make. I found I enjoyed the technology as a user. I think I felt I could perhaps deliver technology better than the technology teams that I was working with at the time. And I made the step into technology to provide it as a service rather than be a consumer of IT as a service. So yes, I made a big career step. Never look back. Don't ask me to fix your laptop, but I'll be very, but problem solving and spotting places for where technology has a use, can drive value is really what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I think that does stem from my user experience back in the day. And therefore, I think I know I can deliver technology from a user's perspective, not simply from a technology leadership perspective. Always found it fascinating, and my goodness me, it never stops changing.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I think you and me are quite alike in that kind of passion for technology and constantly seeing how it evolves as we sort of move into the future. I find that endlessly fascinating as well. So thank you for that, Andrew. And now I'd like to move into a few questions around cybersecurity specifically and defending against potential attacks. To start things off, how would you set about establishing the cyber support you require? And from that, what cyber response capability would you need?
Well, it's great to start with what's the problem. I mean that's what you've asked. So it comes. I use the word resilience in my own introduction. A lot of cyber readiness and the cyber response capability that you need comes from your understanding of the needs for resilience in your organization. What are the things which could go wrong in terms of the likelihood and the probability, and what is the impact? Cyber is just another dimension. So simple answer to the question is, it depends what you do, depends what your business is, in terms of what would happen if stuff stopped working. So if you are running a power station and a cyber attack stops your ability to control the control rods in your nuclear power station, any of us can guess the potential consequences of that, and therefore not just your protection against attack, but also how do you respond should the attack get through the layers of protection is going to be different to an organization. I don't want to run an organization down. Let's think of a very large logistics organization that starts with an A and ends in an N. It would have a huge revenue impact if Amazon cannot take orders or cannot fulfill orders. No one's going to die. The world isn't going to stop. The environment isn't going to be impacted. So for Amazon, absolutely, or any logistics firm, let's not just pick on them, for any logistics firm, of course, there is a huge commercial impact if they cannot do the operational activity of said business. But it's a very different type of impact to a nuclear power station or the health service or any parts of our critical national infrastructure. Similarly, or no, give a third example, organizations that manage huge amounts of data. So I go back to my former life at Grenadier and Paragon, a data processor working on behalf of financial services companies, as an example, utilities as another example. If that company is unable to operate, it is unable to work on behalf of its clients, and its clients are not able to fulfill their obligations to their customers. And then you throw the regulators dimension on top of that. So it needed a different, companies like Paragon, Grenadier need a different readiness and response and overall resilience approach. So, establish the question about, how do you establish what you need depends very much on what you do. And I'll repeat what the impact would be should a cyber attacker get in and prevent you from doing normal business.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think having that bespoke approach from an organization to an organization definitely makes sense, and having that kind of unique defense strategy depending on the organization's priority, I think something you touched upon there makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you for that. And Andrew,
just add actually, and again, it's the way you played it back to me. Within any given organization, there will be different types of data and different types of operation that have a different level of requirement. So it's not a one size fits all. And my experience back in the oil and gas days, there's the field operations, oil and gas exploration and production, and then there's the back office and the finance system and the employee records and so on. And the same should be said for Amazon. The same should be said for Grenadier. The same should be said for a nuclear power station. There are layers. And so it is about taking a proportionate approach. There are some resilience activities that you will take carte blanche across a business. And then there are layers of protection that you will add, and there'll be different response capabilities that you'll introduce in a layered way. So again, being proportionate is really important as well.
That makes sense. Thank you for that, Andrew. And I guess my next question would be, do you have any experience of working with, and can you recommend any cyber support organizations?
I think I'm going to refer our audience to Winmark and an offline conversation to named organizations. I certainly can recommend some. And if there are some that I've got a question mark over, I'd be very honest to say why. But what I think I'm doing is I think I'd like to describe some categories of organizations that businesses may want to turn to.
Okay.
At one level, there are the insurers, the cyber insurers, and we'll come on to that later. The cyber insurers themselves typically have consultants who will provide guidance on what is appropriate protection, resilience, response, and readiness. Of course, it's part of the insurance assessment process. However, they also will have, should we call it, a Chinese wall with their consultancy. And at the end of the day, ultimately, the insurer doesn't want to have to pay out. So you could argue that going to an insurer for their advice on how to avoid having to pay out or claim is a good thing. Many insurance policies will include a panel of experts that you can call on in the event of an incident. They will be named as businesses, so you could go to them in advance of an incident in terms of protection and to understand what resilience is all about. Typically on those panels, there'll be a legal representative, there'll be a forensic cyber specialist, there may be some other technical specialists as well. So that's one group, tightly associated with the insurers themselves or the insurance brokers, and they definitely have consulting services. And I've experienced a number of different brokers who have brought forward their insurance consultants. So they will have cyber specialists who will bring NIST frameworks, ISO frameworks, and they'll also know, very importantly, what the insurers are going to ask, the insurance underwriters are going to ask, so that they can get you the best deal, or they can get you the right policy for your needs, better way of putting it. So the brokers are another group to go to. So that's two within the insurance bracket.
Okay.
The usual suspects, the big audit firms and the big consultancies, the EYs, KPMG, Deloitte, they all have very deep and broad cyber specialist teams, and they will happily provide you with any range of support, from helping to define that requirement up front, as we initially talked about, through to what it is that you might need to do. They can do cyber assessments. They'll also have very operational capabilities to come in and actually do work for you as a managed service or undertake testing and so on. They come with a price, but they also come with a level of trust. You know, it's a little bit like going to certain supermarkets in the high street. There are some supermarkets you go to and you pay a premium, you get a certain expected quality or level of service. There are others which are less costly and maybe product isn't quite the same quality, but it's fit for purpose. So again, I'm not ruling out one or the other. It is a fantastic market at the moment for services in this space. Then you get the specialists. I won't call them, let's call them mid-tier. They range from boutiques of 10s to 20 to 30 type specialists to, you know, quite substantial international organizations, but they are specialists in resilience and cyber activity. And they will provide everything from, pen testing through just sort of general kind of website testing. So testing being the priority thing, looking at code, through to a range of risk assessment, and then ultimately managed services and readiness support and actually response service as well. And all they live for is this type of work. Two more categories to go, nearly there. Then you get the managed service providers. So your typical outsource IT partners. So your Accentures, your Atoses, your IBMs, your Capgeminis, and so on, and all the others, please. I'm not trying to limit it to those. They all have cyber managed service offerings, and they can provide a range of service, from what do you need, so in terms of helping you and guiding you in a consulting-like way, through to actually providing you with an operational service. And then the final piece is the software vendors, and many of the vendors have consulting teams, or they will have the software partner, the classic gold partner, who will come in and be able to provide a service to you. So, you know, Microsoft Suite, fantastic suite, has evolved over the last few years, and there are many Microsoft cyber security partners who can come and provide services. Quote, other software vendors are available, but again, they'll all come with their ecosystem of delivery partners. And that's before you get to the jobbing specialist who can come in and be a specialist for you. So lots of different places to go to. I'll repeat, you look at the insurers themselves and the brokers, classic audit and consulting firms, the mid-tier specialists, the managed service partners, and then the software vendors. So a real selection of price point and capability that I've worked with and can be recommended for strengths and weakness.
Perfect. And certainly a healthy market out there. And again, it's sort of that question of, it depends on the organization's own priorities and go to there. And Andrew, I think you've actually covered off my next question. What services or roles do you see those organizations providing? So unless you had anything else to add on that, I think we could move to the next.
I was going to sort of simplify it really. They can help you. I use the word they. They can help you define what needs to be done. They can help you do it, or they can do it for you. They can step in when there are incidents. And then I think this is where there's a level of important independence. Somebody needs to mark the homework. So is what was said should be done actually being done? From a delivery of a project and capability, then an operation of the capability actually happening. I think that's really important. And that's where sort of marking the homework, as I call it, comes in. And that's where it's really valuable to have more than one party in your organization, or have more than one partner help you. And I know, if you did it yourself, you'd absolutely have an external pen test partner, because that's just how it works. Why you have to. But I think it's very good to have a number of partners in there who are not competing. They're very distinct, but ultimately they help you mark the homework. So there are some clear steps to go through, and I've been through all of those stages, and I'd encourage anyone just to take a look back and say, hang on, do we know what needs to be done, and are we actually doing what we said we would do?
That makes sense. And I think and we have touched upon this already now, but I wanted to ask, did you have any further details on what the rationale might be for using some of these organizations, and a bit more specifically, sort of any details on how they might understand your organization and then apply proportionate recommendations, as well as how they would fit in with wider cyber risk management?
That word proportionate again. It comes down to what you do. Do you develop software? If you're not in the business of developing software, or even modest integrations between software applications, whether they're SaaS or whether they're in-house, you don't need to have a capability around software code review, security built in, etc. So that's one whole aspect that you don't need. If you are not in the world of data processing, yes, you're going to have customer orders, you're going to have a fulfillment system, and you're going to have a finance platform and employee records. That's a very different scale and complexity of data processing than if you're a bank, for example, holding multi-year, tens of years of historical transactions on a whole range of modern and very old systems of control and measure, down to the penny. You simply have a different demand. That links back to the regulator. So if you're a financial services organization, you're highly regulated. If you've got any customer data, GDPR, you've got to have an element of data protection, data management, data privacy. You have to have those roles, and you have to demonstrate that you are doing the right thing by the data that you hold on behalf of your customer, whether it's a B2B customer, B2C customer. So all of these drive what you need and who you therefore might go to. If you simply make stuff or ship stuff, it's very different to providing professional services and advice and guidance. Are you actually creating products with a distinct intellectual property value, where there is the potential for I use the word espionage, theft of ideas, of IP, that you need to protect. And then, of course, the wonderful world of social engineering. If an attack is more of a soft type of engineering, social engineering attack, what is one of your staff going to give away? We had the incident of Kate, I think calling her Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales, and her medical records, very negative in the press. But from the cyber side of things, I think it's fantastic that the organization was able to identify that somebody who should not have been accessing her records was trying to access her records. And they transparently said, this happened. The good news is that person was unable to access her records and they were identified for having tried to. That's really good. That's, that's a fantastic rationale for having the right systems in place in a medical institution, protecting privacy. So it depends absolutely on what your organization does on behalf of your consumer or your customer, what the regulator is demanding, ultimately what's the risk if something were to go wrong. That drives the rationale, and that drives who you might go to.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think it's always this sort of risk question, how to become more risk averse, or at least enable yourself to have that cyber resilience to become more risk averse. I think that's sort of top of everyone's mind at the moment, especially you mentioned social engineering attacks, with stuff like that being on the rise, cybercrime in general. It definitely pays to have a proper cyber resilience strategy in place. So thank you for that. And I think, sort of Andrew, in your experience, have you appointed any organizations that will actually step in to assist in the event of a security breach? And, if you have, what was sort of the pricing structure that they offered and, the cost of the services that they agreed to?
So the answer to the first question is yes. I have appointed organizations who are available to step in, and they have a step-in capability. My experience is you don't pay a retainer, but you do pay a premium for their availability. But they are designed to be available. That's their job. And if they aren't available, they will know a man who can. So on that basis, so that's the basis on which we have worked. We have called upon them at silly hours, and they have worked remarkable hours. The response activity is a very specialist activity, not just responding to there is an attacker in your network at the moment, how do you stop them, but also then the forensic analysis of how did they get in the first place, are they still there, assure me and test that they are no longer working, operating, and that the risk of repetition has gone. That's really important, and a different skill to the day-to-day security analyst that you typically have working for you, or indeed in a managed partner who's providing your operational service. So that's a skill set that you typically cannot have, you can't afford to have all the time. My experience is that the best step-in partner is also a partner who does something day to day for you. Now, there's a little bit of a paradox there. They can't do the operations every day if they're then going to become the specialist to step in. That feels wrong. But perhaps they could be your pen test partner. So they actually undertake regular pen testing or just other testing. They can run purple team or red team exercises on so they're marking the homework of your day-to-day operations, security operations team, whether it's in-house or third party. So in that, they have got line of sight of your business. They are talking to you on a quarterly or more regular basis. Their team have got some familiarity with your network structure, your resilience capability. That I think is really important. That's about, I use the word partner deliberately. So you just expecting to be able to pick up the phone and saying help, and they come in flat is very hard. I think having an organization that knows you in part is really important, and through that there's skin in the game for everybody. Costs, I can't share here, it wouldn't be appropriate, but you do pay a premium. But I've also seen absolute fairness, charging only what is actually expended. And again, come back to the very first question. If a cyber incident is impacting your ability to operate, you know how much money you are losing every minute, every hour, every day. It will be significantly more in terms of that value lost than the cost of having a security partner ready to step in and charge you a fair and reasonable fee for addressing an incident, which hopefully should only happen. If it happens, it should be a matter of days or a week or 2 or 3 from start to kind of restart of full services. That's been my experience. So, the cost, there's only so much cost you should incur. And if you're going to incur, cost versus business value, which is so great, well, you probably won't be in business tomorrow. And I don't mean that to be facetious. That's the reality of, what is worth paying for as a business. You can only afford so much. And if it's going to cost you so much just to reset, you have to question whether your business is actually viable.
That makes sense. I think it's that concept of, can you afford to not effective
Yes.
data breach response, or can you afford to not have one of the partners sort of intimately knowing your business and able to help? Something like that does happen. So that does make complete sense. And I think sort of the final question I wanted to sort of leave our viewers on, and I'd be really interested in insights on this as well, is obviously with the rise in popularity of AI is social engineering are expected. We've all seen stories of people's loved ones getting calls from partner, son, daughter, who says they've been in an accident, they need money, and it's all AI. Frankly, that is quite a terrifying way of sort of looking at the reality, but that is something that will stop more frequently. So how do you best see organizations defending against attacks?
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, there are lots of ways there are different ways to answer it. Okay. We have seen, let's just step away from AI for a second. We have seen the easily, when you know what you're looking for, we have seen the easily identifiable phishing email. Yeah. We know the type of language which is in it. We have seen an improvement in the spelling. We have seen an improvement in the grammar. And AI is simply doing that faster, better, quicker. And when your chief exec, who never normally emails you and says, we've got this special project, it's urgent that you send an email to this person at this law firm that you've never met before, whether it's AI generated or bot generated or human generated, it should spot that you as the receiver of that should go, hang on a minute, this is unusual. That isn't going to change. That isn't going to change. The tools that are filtering emails for those sorts of attacks are looking more intelligently at the structure of the content of email. They're looking in the same way as they already have done at the IP address, the email structure, and so on, to filter before it even gets to you. So the filtering is getting better. And by continuing to educate colleagues on what is a normal email over what's an unexpected email, we continue with the same habits. It's just the AI generation. I think the big thing that's changed is the volume of attacks, but all the statistics are incredible in terms of the volume, the funnel from billions, millions to thousands to the 2 or 3 that get through. And so we can't stop with educating our colleagues on what to look out for. The funnel's getting wider, the filters are getting better, and therefore we're still down to the handful that will get through. And the adages of don't click on links, think about whether this is something you were expecting. Pick up the phone to the person who sent you something before you click a link or take action. Check it's real. If you're asked to change bank account numbers and so on for payments, all of these should follow exactly the same protocols and good practices we've had for years, and thankfully go a long way to preventing an attack to become an incident. The fact that AI generating it, thankfully, we're turning AI around and putting it in the response camp as well. But it's just, I think where it's getting, that's my sort of easy answer. There are AIs now in the voice space, which are able to take and sample small amounts of a voice and play it into a phone message to you. Same thing. Do you normally get a phone call from the chief exec? Do you, does it come, does he normally call or she call on your phone or WhatsApp? How do they, or by email, how do they normally communicate with you? If suddenly you're getting a WhatsApp message from your chief exec who's never previously ever contacted you on WhatsApp, perhaps you want to kind of just pause for a minute, and then actually give them check the phone number, send an email to them directly or their EA, ask the question. So the fact that we're having different channels now of very convincing fake messaging is just another channel. Video is going to be the next one as well, but I mean, we're still not in a world of video. We're on a video call now, but it's not a video call message isn't normal, so it'd be rather odd to get that. But there's some incredible video AI, Gen AI platforms too, but we're away from that. So the good common sense hasn't changed. The way that the attack can be generated, of course, has changed and is far slicker. The ability to introduce tone and all the other aspects and quality is there. But at the end of the day, did you expect to get that message, that request, that demand? And as soon as there's an element of urgency, hang on a minute, you know straight away, pause.
Exactly. And it's again that resilience piece. I think a lot of organizations probably find that as these social engineering, phishing, etc., become more creative, their resilience too will have to become, their response will have to become more creative as well. An idea I had just listening to you talk was, maybe having a period of time where an organization, and they notify their employees of this, send out mock phishing and mock social engineering attacks, and then they have a sort of competition to see who can get caught by it the least. Maybe there's a percentage prize there, stuff like that. Just being creative with it, making sure that resilience is at the forefront of the organizational thinking. So I agree with you there, Andrew.
Yeah, on that last point, I mean, there's training and then there is testing, and there is really good evidence that the more you train and the more you test to do exactly what you said, you send out the fake fish, you see who responds, and then you target those people in a positive, supportive way, has a very, very positive impact on reducing the number that get through. So you can by testing and training and retesting and retraining, you can see materially the intelligence of the community, the employee community going up, their ability to spot go up, and therefore the risk go down. It's really, really money well spent, and there are some excellent providers out there who provide just that combination of targeted testing and training. Absolutely, that needs to evolve, with the changing attack vector, whether it's more on the social engineering space, whether it's more AI generated, and therefore should we call it prettier phishing emails. But at the end of the day, you should still be able to spot there are good clues that are common threads, common themes in getting you to take action that you wouldn't normally take.
That makes sense. And thank you for your insights, Andrew. That is actually it from my end. So I wanted to give a very big thank you to our viewers for joining this piece with you. Me, Ross Webster, and the wonderful Andrew Mark. So thank you. We hope you enjoyed this cybersecurity deep dive and found some great tips and tricks to apply in your own organizations. If you want to learn more about this topic, I would recommend doing what McKinsey advises and join a network, but make sure it's the Winmark CIO one. We look forward to seeing you next time. That's it from us. Enjoy the rest of the day.